And speaking of traditional art, how does that help you digitally in your digital art?
It helps a lot in terms of slowing me down sometimes, and it really helps me focus on making better decisions because
Mm-hmm.
I mostly do watercolor, and it's really hard when you make a mistake. It's like, oh no,
Yeah.
it's over, it's over.
Yeah.
So you know, it really helps me to stop and think about what I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing. And I actually encourage everyone who does digital art to do some traditional painting if they can, because
Mm-hmm.
there's just something so relaxing about going through the
Yeah.
motions and laying down paint and watching it blend and bleed on its own. I go back to it whenever I need a change of pace.
Like you feel like it's a good thing, right, to have a traditional medium to kind of, yeah,
Yeah,
offset your
absolutely.
digital. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's it keeps you on your toes, you know. It's yeah, I think there's something about it. If you're just drawing with one, I don't know, I like spend way too much time on a Wacom
Yeah.
tablet, and I'm like, sometimes I'm like, I can barely even draw with a pencil because I've almost forgotten, and I'm
Yeah.
subconsciously trying to press undo with my other hand, and I can't on the paper. And I think it just, yeah, it's good to switch it up. I think it makes you, I don't know, a little bit more flexible, and it adds to your work, I
I
think.
think so.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
What you just listened to right now was me interviewing a couple of artists for the Pixel Paper podcast, where I interviewed digital artists, and I asked them the question what they think of traditional art, and those were the responses that they gave. This video is about why I think digital artists should at least try and maintain some form of traditional art practice. Using social media for the last few years to show my art has convinced me that using only one medium or one way of working was the right way to do it in order to maintain the aesthetic. However, what I didn't realize until recently is that a lot of artists, particularly professional artists, actually do use other mediums, but they just don't advertise it as much. Just to name a few: Squatch Gouache, Tiffany Mang, Marco Bucci, Nathan Fowlkes, and Bobby Chiu. As I've been exploring my art journey and getting back into traditional art, I am realizing how and why it is so important to maintain some form of traditional art, and I'd like to tell you why. Let's start off with the power of Control Z, or rather the hindrance of it. Unlike digital art, traditional art carries limited options, which are in fact a great thing. Limitations help you to learn faster and therefore create better, and you don't spend unnecessary time undoing your work, and therefore you learn to push past and learn from mistakes. Which brings me on to the next point. For me, I really love the unexpected results of traditional art. When you put down a brushed paper and see the pigment react with whatever's on the page, whether it's water or oil or something else, you have no idea what's going to happen. It allows you to let go and stop feeling like you have to take things under your control so much. The best results in art come through happy accidents, and this is so much easier to do when you're using a medium that gives you the room to play. Of course, there are now better and better apps which give you more realistic simulations of traditional media, like Adobe Fresco and Realistic Paint Studio, to name a couple. But this brings me onto my third point, which is the tactile feeling of traditional art. For me, I find some sort of energy when my hands draw on the paper, or when I swirl the brush in water or mix paints together. I found that when I'm in a really emotional or turbulent state, doing traditional art really helps me to calm down, and whatever I produce is a lot different to what I would normally produce because the energy is just so much more vibrant. There's a different feeling which can't be conveyed through a digital pencil or a stylus. I'm able to use more senses when I'm painting traditionally. For example, smelling the paints or hearing the scratch of pencils on paper. All of this adds to the experience and makes it feel a lot more alive than just sketching on a tablet or on an iPad screen. Of course, it's also a major plus to be able to get away from the screen for a while, and I find that when I put my phone away and just focus on doing art for even half an hour or so, I feel so much more refreshed. It gives my eyes a breather and my brain a moment to relax. I mentioned colour mixing earlier very briefly, and I'd like to come back to that point. When we colour pick from a digital colour wheel, we may not understand what colours are being mixed to create a specific shade. However, when I find myself using, let's say, gouache or acrylic, I'm able to understand more of which colours mix to make what, and I can see how the proportions of certain colours make varying shades of cool or warm tones. Mixing paints traditionally gives me a greater appreciation of the colour wheel digitally, so I'm better able to colour pick when I go back to the screen. And the final point that I wanted to mention in this relatively short video is that traditional art is simply a great way to reset, rewind, and rethink. You can see things from a different perspective, you can jump between different mediums, and you can just have fun playing around like a kid again. It's great because there are all kinds of different mediums and you have no idea which one you'll really fall in love with, so you can just try them all and see which one you like. As adults, it's so difficult to let go and let loose, but I have found that traditional media has really helped me to do this, particularly buying cheaper materials. Like, for example, these oil pastels that I was using in this video were really cheap and there's about 50 of them, so I don't feel bad if I make messy art with them and I have a lot of options to play with. This helps me to let go and also understand the medium better to see if I want to invest in better materials. So far, I've created some really interesting and abstract works which I would never have created on a digital screen, as I would have felt restricted and felt like the work needed to be perfect. So those are my tips on why I encourage digital artists like myself to take up traditional arts. I'd love to know if you have any more down in the comments below, and I also host a podcast interviewing digital artists, and I've asked many of them if they've pursued traditional arts, and I've gotten a variety of answers. You can check that out in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week with another video. Bye!